All year, we've seen debates surrounding awards such as the MVP, Rookie of the Year, and Coach of the Year. And with the NFL honors ceremony set to take place next Thursday, it's time we make these arguments with a full season of football to look back on. So obviously, the most important and most discussed award is the MVP. Personally, I would have to take Patrick Mahomes. I mean, in terms of the actual stats, he led the league in passing yards and passing touchdowns. And then even in the advanced stats like QBR and EPA, he was leading the league. And when you factor in the fact that he lost Tyreek Hill and the receivers he was working with haven't been at the talent level he's normally had, and he's still putting up the same numbers, if not better than he has prior in his career, I think you have to give him the MVP.
I agree with you there. I definitely think Mahomes is the MVP this year, no matter what a bunch of people on this campus and Philly will tell you. I think what you said about Tyreek Hill speaks volumes. I mean, you saw him put up 41 touchdowns and then over 5,000 yards, and he's not working with a guy that completely changes the game anymore. I think with that being said, a guy that is changing the game now is Justin Jefferson, and that's my offensive rookie of the year. I think if we look back on the last few seasons, it's pretty consistent that Tyreek may be the most explosive player in football, and I think that title's been taken by Jettas in Minnesota. I mean, he's putting up crazy numbers. I loved when he was wearing the Randy Moss jersey before the game this year, because I'm just seeing shades of him every time I watch that guy play. And I think he's winning it this year, and I think he wins it for years to come, or at least is in the conversation for it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, when you look at the Minnesota Vikings season, 13 wins, 11 by one score, I mean, so many people wondered how they fared so well in those games. And when you have Kirk Cousins, you could just drop back and know that he has Justin Jefferson to rely on and win his individual matchup. I mean, he could just go to him at those key points in the game, and that's what led to so many close victories.
I mean, that catch against Buffalo was one of the craziest things I've ever seen. I feel like that should get the treatment that OBJ's catch does, but it's like, it kind of like the season just went on. Like, I think about that catch maybe every night.
I mean, especially on fourth down, fourth and long.
It was insane.
Incredible.
I mean, if we're talking offensive rookies, what are you thinking now?
Offensive rookie of the year, the guy that comes to my mind is Garrett Wilson. I mean, you're looking at a guy who played with Zach Wilson, Mike White, Joe Flacco, even Chris Streveler at quarterback, and he still managed to put up 83 receptions, 1,100 yards, and 4 touchdowns. I mean, those are impressive numbers in their own right, and then when you factor in the talent that he was working with at the quarterback position, I mean, it's hard to really pick anybody else.
I totally agree with you. I think had this season gone a little bit different with some injuries and everything else going on there, you could be talking about Brees actually as Rookie of the Year. I mean, I felt like he was powering that offense when he did play. I also love what Kenneth Walker did in Seattle. He was rattling off several 100-yard games right there at the end of the season. And I think he's a beast, but like you said, Garrett Wilson went through so much craziness in the quarterback room this year, and he still managed to put up almost superstar wide receiver numbers with guys like Chris Streveler, who literally looked like they just grabbed him off a farm in Iowa and just said, run. He just ran the ball every time. And you're dealing with that, and you put up the season that Garrett Wilson did, you give him the award. You give it to him.
Yeah, and another guy in New York who I actually think should be the candidate and should be the winner of the Defensive Rookie of the Year, Sauce Gardner. I mean, you're talking about a cornerback who came into the league in his first year and made first-team All-Pro and was heavily discussed as maybe the best player at his position. I mean, he led the league in pass breakups with 20, had 2 interceptions. I mean, it's extremely difficult to do that as a corner alone, and to do it in your rookie year is just incredible.
Look, I like Sauce. I like him as a person. I think he's cool. I think his whole Buffalo Wild Wings, his whole sauce there, I think that's a cool thing. Am I going to order it? Yeah. Do I like Sauce? Yeah, overall. Do I love him? I don't know. You know who I do love? Tariq Woolen. We're talking 6'4", 428 at the combine. How did that guy get to the 4th round? I have no idea, but he showed why he's that kind of guy this year that is even in talks with Sauce. And personally, I think he's better. We're talking 6 picks, leads the league. How many did your guy ketchup have?
He had 2, but hey, I mean,
picks?
they weren't targeting him. He's shutting people down.
At the end of the day, I'll definitely go forth saying that I think these two guys are going to be two of the top DBs in football for the next 5+ years. But if I have my pick, I'm taking that 6'4", 428, 6 picks as a rookie. I can't say no to that.
I like my corners with a little bit more swag, so I'm
Little
gonna
more
have to take
sauce?
sauce.
You like them with
yeah,
a little
more
sauce?
sauce.
What about on the defensive side of the ball? Who's your player of the year? We talked about the rookies, but who's the guy that's the best in the league?
For me, when you're talking about defensive player of the year, I think you got to go to the best defense in the NFL and find the best player on that defense. And for me, that's Nick Bosa. I mean, he led the league in sacks with 18.5. He also had 13 more quarterback hits than the next best player. I mean, he's just a guy who's generating pressure throughout the game, throughout the entire season. And he was just a pivotal player on that Niners run to the NFC Championship game.
If you want to talk about pressure, I do feel like Micah probably brings the most in the game. But at the same time, I can't argue with Bosa winning it when he had 18.5 sacks, 19 TFLs. So I think like anybody watching football this year would say they're the two most dynamic playmakers on defense in the league.
I mean, without a doubt, I think you have to agree that.
But let's
those are
not.
the top
Hey,
two.
Chris Jones is in there, and I just wanted to say he deserves to be in there. He had a fantastic season, 15.5 sacks, probably his best year ever. He's a veteran. He's a Hall of Famer. It's coming down to Bosa and Micah. Me as a Cowboys fan, I may be a little lenient towards Micah.
Just a little bit.
I may bring up his pressure rate. I may do something like that. I may bring up his pass rush win rate. But I can't get mad at Bosa winning. I can't say anything. He deserves it. He had a phenomenal season.
Those are definitely the top two players at the position. I don't think they can go wrong with either one.
100%.
And then another great thing I love about the NFL awards ceremony is the comeback player of the year.
Comeback story.
I mean, every year you're just looking for that player who overcame more adversity than anyone else. And in my opinion, I think when you look at the preseason talk before the season, in the offseason, everyone was talking about Saquon Barkley and how he was injury prone, his career was over, and how he was never going to fulfill the expectations of being a second overall pick. But he came back and he heard all the talk, and throughout the entire season from week 1, he was the workhorse for that offense. On a team with not a lot of talent, he was the premier player on that offense. Defenses knew to key in on him, and he was still making plays. He set a new career high in rushing yards, and they got their first playoff win in over a decade. I mean, that's a great story to me, and it's tough to give to anyone else.
So I love Saquon, don't get me wrong. I was a kid in Dallas watching Penn State on TV. I saw him run. I said, I'm probably going to go to school there, to be real. And I think he is a hell of a player. But like you just said, they were talking a lot about Saquon in the offseason. They were doubting him. They were saying all this stuff. You know who they weren't even whispering about? My guy Geno. Because Geno Smith, he's a comeback story that's 9 years in the making. I forgot about that guy in 2015. And the only time I would ever think about him is when I watched Tavon's college highlights, which, now I'm thinking the Seahawks should sign him and get the old Mountaineers back together. But, yeah, he didn't write back. He didn't write back to all those people that said everything to him. He put up 30 touchdowns, 11 picks, 100 QBR. He led a team that was looking like they were probably going to be in rebuild mode for a good amount of time. And now the question is, do they go after a quarterback or not with the picks that they have?
I like Geno a lot, man. I mean, I'm always rooting for him. To me, his story is more of like a breakthrough or a career revival.
I don't think
not
it's
so much a comeback story.
I don't think you could make a Geno movie. I don't. But I think he's comeback player of the year. So finally, where's that leave us, Coach?
You got to go coach of the year.
Let me hear what you got to say first.
I mean, my bias might be kicking in here a little bit, but I got to give it to Brian Dable. I mean, again, like the same thing with Saquon Barkley. Before the season, this team was projected 5 wins at most by most of the national media. And this guy comes in, completely changes the culture of that team, gets the most out of every single player in that locker room, leads them to 9 wins, first playoff win in a decade. I mean, he just completely revamped a franchise. And to me, that's what defines the coach of the year.
DeBoer, I love him. I think he's totally turned the Giants around. Is that 2 Giants picks in a row, by the way?
It might be.
Is it? I was just making sure. But a guy that has done more than just turn the play of his team around, but turned the entire culture of the franchise around is the kneecap biter himself, Dan Campbell. You look all the way back at Hard Knocks in the summer, we see him talking to his guys. He has an uncanny ability to make them not only believe in him, but also believe in themselves and believe that they can fight. And I think everything you want to say or that could be said about this Detroit Lions season is looking at their record last year, 3-13, and then looking at them eliminate the Packers from the playoffs and finish 9-8. I think that was one of the gutsiest wins I've ever seen in my life. And I think Dan Campbell deserves this award.
A lot of credit to Dan Campbell. At the end of the day, he didn't get that playoff win. So I'm going to give it to Brian Daboll.
The playoff win. It always comes back to the old playoff win. Well, we'll just have to wait and see who takes home the hardware at the NFL Honors Award Show on February 9th. I can't wait.
Can't wait.